the alveoli, the septum are broken, the alveoli are already degenerated. So it's much easier from a corporate perspective to be looking at small molecules that you have the patent on that alleviate one symptom, and you have this huge market, as opposed to integrating several technologies. And the reason why it's difficult to integrate the several technologies to attack disease at the fundamental root, it's difficult because of the need for in-licensing or filing different intellectual properties that cover the multi-dimensions. And this, like Dr. Carrier said, has historically been a problem in medicine because as drug developers, we try our main responsibility to the shareholder. And as physicians, Dr. Carrier's main responsibility is to the patients. So there's an inherent conflict
of interest there
in this. There's an inherent conflict, and that's why we really need, if we're going to develop approaches that actually cure diseases, we really need multidisciplinary, multi-targeted approaches. The best example, perhaps, of this has been with HIV and the development of the cocktail, where several different, the HIV example is a good example, and it's a good paradigm, if you will, for COPD, and it's even at least from a collaborator point of view looking in, from an outsider looking in, is what Entest is trying to do, which is to integrate what is known from the mechanistic angles and how we can put it together. See, in HIV, there's the different steps of the viral replication, viral integration, viral entry, and viral replication. And if it was not for the strong lobby group and the strong pressures that were put in, we would not have the triple cocktail. Everybody would still be, in the multi-drug cocktail, everybody would still be focusing on their one little approach. The same kind of initiative has to take place in this terrible disease of COPD. And to date, besides Entest's intellectual approach, the putting together these different components of the disease, I have not seen any other company taking this aggressive multi-level attack.
Well, I'm wondering, I'm aware of organizations that are trying to manifest interest in government support. People like Stem Cell Pioneers, for example.
Yes.
It appears that for whatever reason, the HIV grassroots lobbying effort seems to have been very strong, and we really have to mobilize, I think, the COPD population out there to focus on getting government behind the research, to support the research in COPD, which is amazing to me because you're looking at the fourth leading cause of death in the U.S., soon to be the third leading cause of death in the U.S., and yet it seems to be the unwanted stepchild.
Yeah, there's some lobbying is required, or some understanding or level of understanding and of this issue. But I totally agree with you that there needs to be shift and maybe some programmatic development on the level of the NIH or private foundations related to this disease to fund the research, because there's people and the prevalence is very high, as you mentioned. It do require some good approach. I just wanted to comment on what Dr. Ichim has said about multifactorial approach. I think one of the errors of modern medicine is that we're using one agent where diseases are so complex, whether it's cancer or degenerative disease, which is also COPD, and I think there has to be many level of targeting to like enhancing immune system or suppressing when there's an autoimmune component, or detoxing if there is some toxin deposition, modifying, enhancing healing ability, as we discussed. All of this put together will give the best effect. And I'm actually very impressed with Mr. Koos' vision for this company and for his vision for COPD.
Well, it just seems to me as I'm scratching my head, and I'm not a scientist, so as one looking from the outside in, it would appear that if this disease were easy to cure and could be done so by a single approach, people would have done it a long time ago. It obviously takes a lot of work to identify what the factors are, and you have to create a model that identifies those factors and figure out how it is that you attack each variable that you need to attack to cure this drug or this disease.
And this is one of the reasons why it's very interesting, the innovative bioinformatics approach and the bioinformatics model that Entest has been putting together. One of the biggest problems in science, at least in modern science, is not so much the fact of identifying new pieces of the biological puzzle. I mean, the majority of the pieces were identified in 2000 when the human genome, when we understood there was 27 something thousand genes. That's the number of building blocks. There was different glycosylation, phosphorylation, and so on patterns on the genes, but essentially the building blocks are known of the human. Now, with the advent of microarray technology and the gene chip, where basically the microchip technology, they have put every single gene on a microchip. And then when you have a disease such as COPD, you take the cells from the COPD person and compare it to healthy person cells, and you know out of each of those 27,000 genes, you know which ones are higher and lower in the different cells of the person with the COPD. So, in terms of the biggest problem, I believe, in science right now is not so much lack of wet laboratory work, but it's an issue of integration. And how we can integrate now, and it's no longer an opinion question, and it's no longer something that we have a choice in. The integration has to occur through computers, not only through somebody sitting at the library and reading and trying to draw correlations between different findings, but the whole process is becoming automated. And this is one of the exciting things that excited us about Entest, has been the involvement of bioinformatics in terms of, not bioinformatics in terms of looking at gene sequences, but actually text-based, putting together the information and developing different pathways, different frameworks of understanding from the very detailed to the global level, what are the biological processes happening? And as this is being built, not only do we understand the disease, and not only do we understand different points where we can intervene at, but from that comes the possibility of looking at drugs that are already on the market that affect some of those points and finding the new uses for these drugs. And again, this is one of the very exciting things. Once you understand at the molecular level the disease, then a whole variety of interventions come.
Not to interrupt, but basically the whole notion of bioinformatics is like having a Betty Crocker cookbook. So that, Betty Crocker, I want to bake a cake. Okay, this is what I have to put in, ingredients-wise.
Yeah.
The doctor looks at COPD, says you have COPD at this stage, and according to this model, these are the factors that we face. These are the potential treatments for certain manifestations, and that's how you get a whole complete treatment profile for that patient.
This is certainly a very visionary approach that will put you aside from other perhaps biomed companies, because I totally agree that we need some higher level of integration of all the information that we have for the specific disorder. And once we have those programs, I call them three-dimensional models of the disease, where we input a lot of information and we output how this should be targeted, then I think the treatment options will be much, much better. So from my perspective, I have interest in this for a long time, and I think this is very, very futuristic and very amazing approach that you're taking to develop this kind of a models of disease, perhaps even cancer and other diseases.
So Dr. Carrier, when you treat, for example, multiple myeloma, I imagine one patient is not the same as another patient, despite having very similar clinical presentations.
They have very different genetic profiles.
Yeah.
protein profiles, symptomatology, presentation, and response.